I played Jorden van Foreest's little sister, a 2300 FM who is 16 years old. Incredible. I had the white pieces and she had black. I started with e4. She plays 3 different ways from move 1, and so I prepared against everything. So e6, I was comfortable playing d4, d5, the French defense. I go knight c3, and now my opponent goes d takes e4. This marks the Rubinstein variation. I have played this probably 5 times in my life with a white. It's really not the number 1 move. This is the most popular, bishop b4, and another popular one is knight f6. But d takes e4 is very playable, although it scores very well for white at the top grandmaster level. I take with my knight, knight d7, my opponent just wants to go knight f6, and then just trade off the knights here. So I go with simple development, knight f6, I trade with check, knight takes, and bishop d3. You might recognize that this position is really easy to play. It's like, I have a nice pawn structure, I have a nice development pattern, I'm gonna castle, and the way I treated this with the white pieces is basically I played this as if the white pieces have an isolated pawn on d4 against e6, f7. And this is a very typical chess structure that you would have, in which white would just go for a full-on attack and use this anchor on d5 to support a knight on e5, have a bishop on g5 to poke at the defender on f6, have a bishop on d3 poking at h6, castling and getting a rook on e1 to then rook lift to h3. These are the plans against that pawn structure. And I was like, well, we are kind of like one trade away from me just having an isolated pawn on d4 and us transposing to that pawn structure, so I'll go for those plans anyways. So I go with really rational development. Bishop e7, I go castles, I go bishop g5, just developing my pieces nicely. Queen d6, she took so much time on this move. She took 20 minutes for queen d6. I was puzzled as to why she took the time, why queen d6 was played. I don't fully know, but after my move rook e1, I just want to support knight e5 here. Now I know why. She goes rook d6, really just, I mean, pressuring d4 on the open file, and maybe pressuring with c5, things like this in the future. Very surprising to me. So I just played my game. I mean, I went with knight e5 here, and she, to say the least, was shocked. I mean, her nonverbal expression was like this. Knight e5, I mean, I'm gifting a pawn, but not really. So it involves quite some nice sacrifices, which I took quite some time on. I'm pretty proud of this. If queen takes e5, I just have bishop takes f6, removing the defender from h7. And on bishop takes f6, I have bishop takes h7 check, king takes, and queen h5 check, king g8, and here I can have a draw by 3-fold repetition very easily. So I knew that my opponent would not go for this because you don't want to draw against somebody 300 points lower than you, so I knew that she would avoid this variation. The strategies. So here, you don't really have to take with the bishop, but if you take with the pawn, I can go like queen h5, and this is still completely winning, like I'm threatening 2 things, and yeah, you can't take my knight because it's checkmate in 2 moves here. And so there's another way to play this, actually, and that is by just kicking my bishop, like just not going for d4 at all. And now I really just have one option, or so I thought I had one option. Here I'm pretty forced to take this knight, and after bishop takes, I give up the bishop pair, but I still have a lot of space and a reasonable attack. The best move here, and for very concrete reasons is the best move, is bishop e3, which I completely missed during the game. I'm in an attacking mode, and now I have to actually resort to a defensive mode, which is really hard to switch mindsets like that in chess. The reason for this is, when you are attacking in chess, and this is a very, very important rule for attacking chess players, do not trade that many pieces off the board, because the more you trade, the more your attack loses power, and we will see this exactly in this game as a perfect prototype, really. So I take on f6 because I want to continue my attack with queen h5, threatening f7 here. And now my pieces are very vibrant, but they lose some power after bishop takes e5, pawn takes. And now I really just have like 3 attacking pieces 2, maybe 2.5 with the rook, and my attack loses its power, which means that black can start to counterattack with queen b4, tempoing my pawn. And now, the next 2 moves, I take up half of my time, 30 minutes on 2 chess moves were taken. The queen threatens this pawn here on b2. Okay, if I play b3, I'm kind of just like accepting that her pieces are completely intertwined in my position, and I don't necessarily want that. So I was thinking of anything but. An engine at depth 50 would say b3 is a reasonable move and probably the best move, but also says another move is quite good, and that is rook e4, which I played. That's right, I'm sacrificing a pawn for hopes of a better attack on this king that has lost all of its defenders. I might have traded off 2 minor pieces, which is seen as bad typically, but my opponent has also lost 2 key defenders around her king, her bishop and her knight. So after queen takes b2, which tempos my rook, now I go rook e1, and now bishop d7, which I didn't see. I actually was only fixated on like queen c3 things or even rook d4 things. I really have a nice line on rook d4, which is queen h4. So nice. And here I'm attacking the rook, and I'm also eyeing d8, so that if you take, I have check, king up, and then bishop takes, and then I'll go like queen f8, and your bishop is pinned to your rook, and I'll attack the weaknesses, and it's pretty much over. So that's a bit of the idea of the pawn sack. I'm sacking a pawn for time, for energy, for pieces going towards that king, and eventually if I can get 2 rooks rook lifted towards the king, and let's say I want to go like h3, and if I can get a king safe on h2, that is the ideal goal. I'll sack a rook, and I'll try to go for a mating attack. My opponent goes with bishop d7, very surprising to me. Bishop d7 aims to trade bishops here, which I was really pissed off about. Like, I didn't really want to let that happen on the board. So instantly I tried to look at rook g4, which is obviously the move that I want to go for. I want to try to threaten h6. But then after queen c3, I was really not feeling this position. If I go like rook e3 here, there's like queen a1 check, forcing my bishop back, and now this bishop d7 move, we know why it's played. I am absolutely busted on f1. So this was not possible, and I looked at king f1, which is the move here to keep equality, but I just didn't like it after queen here. And for some reason, I thought that after here, queen d1 check, I was completely busted. Mind you, I'm like calculating 7, 8 moves ahead now, and yeah, this is the best way for white. You just accept the draw here, and you go rook e3, and you're always threatening this, you're always threatening some things like this with a draw, and yeah, it's a complete draw. This would have been the best way to play as white, intending also that you're down a pawn. So I go with rook f4, seeing all that and being scared of king f1. Rook f4, and I'm threatening f7. It's looking pretty good, but then my opponent stuns me with a crazy defensive move that really like took me a blast. Bishop e8. And now black is threatening the discovered attack f5 on my queen to defend everything, and also threatening once again rook d4, but it's not the same thing because I don't have this queen h4 resource. Okay, maybe because of g5, but also because this rook takes up d8, and there's just like there's no resource queen d8 anymore, as we saw previously. So here, reacting to all this at once, I go queen g4, preventing rook d4 and preventing f5 things. I would just win on f5 now. But then rook d5 ensues. Really strong move. She is trying to attack my pieces while bringing in her pieces that have lacked development this entire game. I forgot to say this at the beginning of the opening, but one reason that white is so good right from the opening is that this bishop is absolutely terrible and has tough times even developing with b6, bishop b7 in lines where I can go like queen f3 when my knight is on e5. And this rook, because of that bishop having trouble developing, this rook also has trouble like even getting out. So far into the game, when I let this bishop develop a little bit and this rook come into the game, this is when some warning signs come into my head, big red alerts. I have 16 minutes left on my clock, and I go with rook fe4 defending, rook a d8 counter-attacking, doubling on the d file, threatening rook d4 probably. I go with h3. This is my plan the whole time, but these h3, king h2 things have been all slow up until now. And here it's fine. Now she plays bishop b5. I go with takes, rook takes, and now I go queen h4. I'm just trying to get an attack going. Rook b d5. And now this was a mistake, I believe. No, I go with king h2. This was a mistake, rook d4, because now I can go rook e3, and I'm almost saving this game. Yeah, I'm almost saving this game. It's almost equal. Rook 8 d5, best move, and now I have to find rook b3 to go into basically a almost drawn endgame. The queen has to retreat to a1 to keep defending this, and then rook takes, queen takes, queen takes, rook takes, and this is a drawn endgame here. Winning the pawn, equalizing the position. Wow. Yeah, I'm down on time, so I have 3 minutes left. I swap rooks, and here is another conundrum. Would you swap queens or would you not swap queens in this position? If you trade queens, you're admitting a pawn down in a rook endgame, and that's hard to, it's hard to draw that, and you are playing for a draw, so I'm not doing that. I'm going rook e4 because I still have some attacking chops left. Queen d2 is played, a small mistake. I should play rook g4 here, but I go with c4 first, kicking the rook, and now rook g4, threatening queen f6, I believe. g6 is played, weakening the king, and now I go for queen f6. Queen c2, defending anything that can be sacrificial on g6. And now I have trouble coming up with a plan, and I should maybe just like go like a3. And if you really try to seriously fetch my pawn, then I can go for some rook takes g6 ideas. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. I won't play it. So I go with rook f4. My queen is like missing some squares suddenly. But rook f4 always keeps this rook anchored on f7. It was kind of important for me to do that. c5, now I go with this h4 plan. Although I am quite fine. I'm still losing, I'm down a pawn, but I'm still quite fine after a3. Just saving my pawn on the a file, because ultimately you'll see my downfall. After h4, queen e2, g4, king moves. I have nothing, like I have nothing to sacrifice. My queen is trapped, by the way. Queen takes a2, and now like my attack just doesn't go anywhere. My queen is trapped, and you'll see her pawn just ride down the board. I have nothing to do. I'm just trying to push some pawns, and here after queen takes h5, I resigned. I was really upset from this game. I kept thinking my opponent escaped with it. She was lucky. She played very well. She was very patient in the opening. She counterattacked well. And ultimately, I should have done a better job, A, attacking and being patient, going bishop e3 back when the time was due. And also, once it was equal, just admitting to equalizing with b3, when after queen b4 attacking my pawn, just going for slow chess. Or if I wanted to go aggressive, rook e4, which was a fine move anyways, queen takes, I had to go king f1. I have to find that. If you're going for a sharp line, you have to play precisely, and that's what I missed out on. Now I have 1 out of 3 in this tournament, and tomorrow, surprisingly, I was paired against an IM. Despite me losing 2 games and winning 1, I'm paired against an IM with a pretty poor tournament. Let's see how I do tomorrow.